Jeigu kažkas kažkur.
Susitikslinimui angliškai, aišku, darysim.
Yes, we can be switching to English right now. So welcome to those who are slowly joining us. We still have a few minutes to wait until we start. Okay. This webinar is also being recorded, so if anyone will want to rewatch it, the link will be available, and it is also being live streamed on YouTube. So that link will also be available. That's one thing we're noticing, that people do commit to wanting to be at the webinar, but always something might be coming up, and the recording and the availability of the recording afterwards is truly what makes a big difference. And we see lots of viewers doing that after the webinar, actually. But being live gives the possibility to ask questions, and I think that's the advantage of being live with us today. So welcome again to those who are with us, and to those of us who will be joining us live. We have one more minute. All right. Well, this is 4:30 because we do want to be to fit within our timeline, to fit within 1 hour that we kind of promised that our webinars will take on Thursdays. So just being respectful of your timeline and respectful for our speaker. As I have said, this webinar is being recorded, and it's also live on YouTube for anyone who is watching us there. So you can always go back and rewatch if you missed something, or if you need to review what has been said. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. So this is LCC International University Cybersecurity webinar series done with our partners, who are our partners together with us on the cybersecurity bootcamp program that is run through our university. Truly today, huge thanks go to our partner, Hermitage Solutions Baltics, who are providing us with their guest speaker. So let me introduce you to Evaldas Valūnas, the product manager at Hermitage Solutions Baltics, who will be leading today's webinar with the theme of evolution of multi-factor authentication with Yubico. So I think there will be a lot of practical insights, a lot of new things that you will be able to learn. And I know that during this webinar, there'll be conversations about working in a remote work environment, what authentication methods are the best, what to consider. So, Evaldi, thank you for being with us this Thursday afternoon. I give the floor to you, reminding the audience also to use the opportunity of being live with us and asking questions. We will leave time at the end of the presentation, so you can type your questions in the Q&A box on Zoom. If you are watching us live on YouTube, you can comment there. I'll be monitoring the questions and we'll address those at the end of the webinar. And now, Evaldi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I just want to double check if my screen is visible. Oh, sorry for the noises. We have a construction going on, and they agreed not to make any noises, but somehow they are not sticking to the promise. Hopefully they will end the noises soon. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Evaldas Volunas. I'm a cybersecurity product manager at Hermitage Solutions Baltic. So in general, yeah, we are a cybersecurity value-added distributor. So in general, what it means, we are representing cyber or IT security solutions in the Baltic markets. And yeah, Yubico, as one of the multi-factor authentication solutions, is within our portfolio. Actually, we are using it in our everyday life, so we are pretty well familiar with this product solution. We understand what it does, how it works, and if there will be any questions, I believe we'll be able to answer them from our practical, let's say, side. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Yeah, so for everyone to be just on, or just a second, somehow my slides are not changing. Just give me a moment. Yeah, from the beginning, for everyone to be on the same page, so I just want to kind of remind you, yeah, what we mean when we're talking about the multi-factor, what it means, what kind of multi-factors it is, so that during our presentation, you would know exactly what we are talking about, yeah? So as a definition, you might find a lot of definitions which are somehow similar. So yeah, one of the definition which represents the idea of multi-factor authentication is it's a method when a user which wants to connect to or log into the system must provide at least 2 factors which confirms that he is what he claims he is. So in general, 3 factors are kind of divided into 3 groups. Yeah, first one is, and the most common is something user knows. Yeah, so what user knows is a username, password, PIN code. Yeah, so this is what we have in our everyday life. The second factor is what user has. So a very good example of that is kind of your payment card, banking payment card. You have a physical plastic card and you know the PIN code. So yeah, in that case, it would be what user has and what user knows. Has a card, knows the PIN code. Talking about IT sector, so it could be a mobile phone or what you have and you receive an SMS message. You might have some security token which generates code, etc. And the third category is what user is. So in this area, it is already related mostly to the user's biometrics. It's a fingerprint, iris scan, a voice. In some cases, there are some systems which are using voice recognition, etc. But it's more niche and more specific solutions. So to sum up, yeah, it's something user knows, something user has, and something user is. Yeah, so 3 main categories. And what type of authentication kind of devices or measures are most common and what we can come across, let's say, in our everyday life? Yeah. So I already mentioned, yeah, it's a biometric. So devices which can scan your fingerprint, scan your iris, etc. Yeah, magnetic cards, which could be used for banking or for entering premises, buildings. Security keys, so one which could be used just to identify the presence. So I have to insert USB key into my computer and to touch it just to confirm my physical presence. Security tokens or mobile devices. So it's a let's say device which is generating, for example, a temporary one-time code, yeah, which is required to enter within, let's say, 20-40 seconds during a restricted period of time. Yeah. Challenge and response. So it's actually when the system application to which I'm trying to connect is asking me kind of challenging. Yeah, so I entered my username and password and it says, please provide the answer to your security question, like what is the name of your pet, what's your mother's maiden name, etc. Yeah, so this type of questions you might be familiar and you set it up when you are creating your account. And smart cards, it's more secure devices. So actually where you can store your certificates, it's mostly used in business environments. Yeah, so you have a card with a certificate, and the certificate contains information about your account. Yeah, so what kind of level access you can get when you insert the card and, let's say, enter PIN to unlock the card. So of course there might be also more specific or more niche solutions, but these are the most common. Yeah. And how do it all stack up together? So yeah, for a long time there was this kind of conception, which right now is turning into misconception, that the security and convenience are on two totally different axes. So it means if it is easy to use, so it's not secure, and vice versa. If it is a secure solution, it very oftenly difficult to use. And for some time it was true. So hopefully and gladfully, actually, at the moment this concept is changing, because with the new methods of multi-factor authentication, we have a high level of security and ease of use. So we'll get back to this kind of picture a few times in our presentation, because it will be related to also our following topics. So yeah, and as it says that not all of them are made equal, so it means that some solutions, despite being secure, but they are prone to specific type of, let's say, risks or vulnerabilities. And even it gives us kind of a sense of security that I have two-factor authentications, but in any way, my account could be compromised, and these measures will not save me from losing or kind of for hacker to breach my account and take over my account. So some solutions are still good. Some of them are very popular and still in use, like SMS codes still being used very broadly, but actually it's not very safe. Of course, I have to emphasize that any kind of MFA is much better than non-MFA. So that is a kind of rule of thumb. So let's move on. And what could be kind of specifics or risks associated with one and another technology? Yeah. So as you saw on the previous card, yeah, solutions on the top are more secure, and solutions at the bottom are less secure. So smart cards is a very good solution. It is being used already for a quite long time, and it is with a reason, because yeah, it's a secure, but it has some other things related to that. It is secure, but actually it costs a lot of money, because if you want to maintain the infrastructure to use smart cards, you have to have additional middleware. So what it means, you have to have servers and applications, which has, let's say, applications which are providing certificates which are being issued or written to these smart cards, which are checking validity of the certificates. You have to have a physical readers attached to your computers, and you have IT personnel capable to manage it. Yeah, so in general, it is secure and it's costly. Yeah, SMSs are also are popular, but we have also some drawbacks. Some of them may be not relevant, let's say, here in our region, but in other regions have a huge impact, let's say, coverage. Yeah, because in some areas you may not have a GSM coverage, or let's say mobile data coverage, and you would not be able to use your mobile phone to receive SMS. Also, very often might happen that your battery drains, your phone is turned off, and until you charge your phone, hopefully you have a charger during that time, you will not be able to connect to the system because your phone is turned off. Yeah. And OTP devices, so you can relate it to this kind of small physical devices, probably which used it sometime in the past, which generates one-time code. Good example was for those who were using online banking account, something like 10 years and more ago. So there were some physical devices. Actually, me, myself, I remember having two of those, because I have two different accounts in two different banks. so I had to carry. So it is pretty secure, but it is limited because it usually associated one device with one account. So when we'll talk in the further slides, we'll see that at the moment users are having much more than one or several accounts. They have something like 100 or even 100 plus accounts which we need access to. And what it causes, so in general, it could be three main categories. It's a bad user experience because, some of the solutions are not easy to use, and it has a kind of bad user experience. Other devices could be intercepted. It means if someone could spy on your traffic, let's say let's say hacker is in your network and can scan your network traffic, they can intercept the passwords being transmitted via network. And of course, these type of solutions, except for smart cards, are still kind of focused or could be breached via phishing attacks. And regarding phishing, we'll talk a little bit later. So how it all looks from, let's say, chronological perspective, So for a long time, when we started using computers, computers as we know now, so initial security measures were password, username and static password, and it was okay for quite a long time. Later, after a few, let's say, it's in 70s, it was introduced in 70s smart cards, but it was not very popular for a couple more decades. So for a very long time, usually what we were using, it was passwords. Smart cards, it was a pretty niche, and only a small part of, let's say, users were using this type. Later on, new solution like a key fob. So it's a physical device which generates the code. This device is synced or kind of connected to your to the application and to your account, and the code these devices are issued linked to your user account, and these codes could be used only for your account. So it was pretty secure. These codes were changing. It was one-time codes. So at the time, it was pretty secure. Later on, when people understood how it works, they were able to hack this type of devices. Also, after some time, so it's already in 2010, software tokens, so it was on a mobile phone, applications which were generating codes, for example, Google Authenticator, later on Microsoft Authenticator. And right now we have many different authenticators. It's applications on the mobile phones which could generate one-time password. And until this moment, if we take a look back, there was no any generic standardization. I would call it was a wild west. Anyone was doing whatever they wanted because it was no any kind of general or global standardization. So for every product, every company was doing their own security additional measures. Starting from 2014, many global technology leaders like Google, Ubico, and later on many others have joined on board. FIDO Alliance was formed, so I will talk about FIDO a little bit later, but in general, it's a main technology players came together and decided, let's make a global standardization to make it easier to make user authentication standardized, that everyone would understand how it works and could implement on broader amount of the systems and devices. So this idea took off. Actually, we released the first version, something like 2017. In 2019, we released the second version. I will talk about it also a little bit later. And more companies are joining this FIDO Alliance and implementing FIDO standard-based solutions. So this was the chronological. Yeah, so if we're looking, let's say, from this kind of more technological point of view, so how it looks. Yeah, previously we have passwords. Later on, we can call it was a legacy multi-factor authentication. So it was older technologies which are still in use at the moment. So like this SMS codes, mobile push, one-time passwords on mobile phones, and now we are already switching to modern MFA, like which are based on FIDO 2 certifications. And looking into the future, we have this prospect of a passwordless. Actually, hopefully we'll get it pretty soon. So the idea that we will not need any more passwords and we'll be able to use security devices to authenticate ourselves. And I'll just elaborate on that a bit more, why industry is moving towards that side. Because if we take a look on the left side, so these devices are phishable. I will explain a bit more regarding phishable, and this new, which are based already on, which has a standardization and documentation. This is kind of prone to phishing. Yeah, so now let's start from the passwords. Yeah, it looks like everyone knows what is a password, everyone is using. It's kind of what would be difficult. Yeah, but if we take a look at the recommendations, how to handle passwords to be secure, it's getting more tricky. Why is that? Yeah, it is recommended to have unique, hard to get passwords. Yeah, of course, but you don't want anyone easily to guess your password and get access to your account. Yeah, so in order to do that, you have to have at least 20 plus symbols in your password. It should be uppercase, lowercase, digit, and these special symbols, characters. Of course, you should not reuse your passwords. And the worst thing what you can do, you reuse your personal passwords in your working environment. So if your personal account is being breached, maybe you are kind of acting a bit more carelessly with your personal information. So this information could be used to take over your business account and cause some damage to your, let's say, company. And of course, to avoid losing the passwords, you should change it frequently. There are some recommendations. You have to change it at least once a 3 months, or at least once a 6 months. Yeah, and you should not be writing it down and leaving it somewhere on the post notes, or somewhere on your table or under your computer. So when we talk about 1 or 2 passwords, yeah, it could be okay, but in reality, you can find different statistics. Some of them are mentioning that user has up to 100. Some are mentioning that the users has more than 100 passwords in which they are using. So actually, just before presentation, I double check. I have something like 150 passwords on my password vault. So my colleagues, some of them are having even more. So what does it mean? Yeah, 100 passwords if I'm changing it according to the recommendation every 3 months. So actually, I have to change my password 4 times a year. Yeah. So what does it mean? That during the period of year, I have to remember at a certain point up to 400 passwords. So it's not even impractical. It's actually impossible. Yeah. Good thing actually that there are some password managers. Yeah, so you can kind of put in order your password, store it and manage easily. Yeah, and manage is everything where the password managers are kind of stopping, because I will explain what I mean by that. Yeah, so it can meet all of these requirements. It can be long, complicated passwords, and you don't have to remember it because it is stored, or let's say, in the application on your mobile phone, on your computer, wherever you are using this password manager. Yeah. Okay, good. But when you want to connect, actually, this password manager is giving away the password to the system to which you are connecting. And here, there are risks that this password could be intercepted. And phishing is one of the attacks. And once again, I'm mentioning this buzzword phishing because and I'm doing it for the reason because phishing at the moment is one of the most common threats or the risks that users are facing. And actually, the phishing is focused on getting kind of taking over user accounts to gather users' credentials. And these kind of, let's say, criminals who are doing that, they are getting pretty creative, and they are managing to trick people to provide their credentials, because people, they are thinking that they are connecting to the legit sites and providing information as they would be connecting to the systems. Yeah. So I mentioned the passwords. Yeah. So previously I also mentioned there is kind of this additional layer of security. Yeah, it's a security question, but actually it does not make MFA, multi-factor authentication, because it is based on the same criteria. What user knows? I know my password and I know my security question. So it doesn't matter what kind of question I set, it is still one factor, but only used 2 times. Yeah, so from here we can move to the kind of to the evolution, to the second step, and it's already this multi-factor authenticators, which are used pretty broadly. Yeah, so it's kind of SMS received to mobile phones, mobile push. It means when application on your mobile phone or on your computer, for those who are using Macs, asking if you want to connect to this application, you have to push yes or no. And one-time password. So it means one password could be sent via SMS, generated via software. This authentication application or the token. So actually software generates, yeah, and you have to enter it to log into the system. So for getting back to our initial picture, so it's somewhere here. Yeah, it's more secure solutions, but it's not totally secure. Yeah, because it still could be phished. Yeah, so let's take a look deeper. Yeah, because I mentioned one of the solutions is the mobile phones. Yeah. So everything is okay if your phone is safe, but in case your phone is infected, it has a malware. So let's say hacker can take control of your phone, and in case the hacker is able to control your phone, actually they can intercept all the information on your phone. So it means if you are generating this additional kind of second authenticator factor codes, or you are receiving SMS, all this information could be intercepted. And actually it does not save you from sharing, kind of losing this information, and your account could be taken over. Of course, it's not very often, because it has to come together. Yeah, your phone should be infected and someone should be trying at the same time to take over your account. But in theory, it is possible, and there were some major breaches which were actually based on this kind of vulnerability, when phones were taken over and information about the accounts were exposed. The second thing is phishing. Yeah. So in general, what I mean by phishing, yeah, for those maybe who are not very much familiar. So in general, phishing is an attempt by a criminal who wants you to fool you, in simple words. You are receiving an email which looks legit, and in this email there is some kind of urge that you should do something. Let's say they are writing you that someone is trying to connect to your account, so please log in and change your password. Or if you are using some service, let's say your service is running out, renew your subscription. Or let's say if you are using, which is very often, online storage, yeah, you just get information that your storage is being used, please delete some information or update your plan. Yeah. And if you are using the system, you might react to this email because you need to fix it to be able to use the service. Yeah, so if you think that the information that you received is legit, you would log in and provide information, your login credentials, to the criminals. So how does it work in reality? So actually how it works, and how this, let's say, legacy of this common used multi-factor authenticator solutions actually are failing. Unfortunately, it is failing to protect your account. So if you received a So the first step, yeah, you get the fake email or with a link to the fake website. It looks legit. For example, it might look that it's from Facebook, from Dropbox, from Microsoft 365, from Google account. It might look okay, yeah. You click on the link and you enter your credentials. In case, let's say you have enabled the second factor or second factor. So how it works? When you open this fake website, there is a automation. Actually, in most of the cases, there is an automation, and all the information that you enter into this account is being replicated on hackers' computer, and they are relaying or forwarding the same information into the real website. So actually, you are entering in on a fake website, and the hackers are transmitting this information to the real, but they are already monitoring. And once you enter your credentials, let's say if you have a multi-factor authentication, the real website says, oh yeah, I recognize this user. He has this, let's say, SMS code. I send him back a SMS code, or it has push notifications. So I send the push notification to the user to the mobile phone. Since the user opened the website which he thinks is legit, so he enters the SMS code or accepts the push notification, and he connects to the website. So actually, he thinks that he connects because he's on the fake website, and all the credentials are being transferred to the real website. In that case, what your hacker does, he already has access to your account. So in most of the cases, they just change the passwords so that the user could not reconnect again, and from there they are doing what they plan to do. So in that case, whenever you are using SMS code, push notification, or one-time passwords, it does not save you from phishing attack. It saves you from other, but not from the phishing. So, and also it's not, let's say, if we compare to the modern solutions, despite it's not being very secure, it also, well, already compared to new solution, it takes pretty much a long time to authenticate yourself. This is an example with a number of steps which has to be taken if you are using SMS for the second factor authentication. So in general, it takes 9 to 10 steps what you have to do, which would be enough for just 2 or 3 steps if you would be using, let's say, FIDO USB security key. You just insert the key, touch the key, and your presence is being kind of confirmed, and you log in. When you have SMS, you know, if you have, you know the drill. Yeah, you try to log in, you enter your username and password. Sometimes you might need to enter your mobile phone. Sometimes they might remember your mobile phone. You get SMS, you open message, read the code in the message. You have to retype it into the computer. Hopefully you do not miss it. If you make a mistake, you have to redo it. If you don't, you just log in. So it's time consuming. And let's say if you have several accounts, you have to log in using this. It might be pain in the neck to do it every time you need to connect to the systems. Okay. Okay, so now let's talk about a bit newer solutions. And in this case, all the solutions are on the right side is already based on FIDO UTF. UTF stands for Universal Second Factor, and FIDO 2 is already ready for this passwordless authentication. So I'll talk about it a little bit later. So start from the beginning, what is a FIDO? Well, abbreviation in general, it means fast identity online. As I mentioned, it consists of technology leaders like Ubico, Microsoft. Later on, many others have joined. I will show the full list of board members, which are, so it's mainly technology companies and other bigger enterprises which see benefit in standardizing your user access security, well, to make it standard. Yeah, so historically, if we take a look, let's say up till, well, FIDO was founded in 2020. Actually, we launched in 2013, and first standard was released in something like 2017, if I'm not mistaken, and the second version was released in 2018. So it means until then, nothing very special wasn't happening. So it means only a few last years, some standardization were taking place in the industry. And there are some reasons for that. And one of them is regulation, because for some time there was no any global local regulations, and only, let's say, during the last two decades, some regulations were took place, and only few of them had a bigger impact. Let's say probably the most famous, what we know at the moment, is the GDPR. So that we need to protect our personal information of our customers. Also, the same is in the US. Also, there are some HIPAA for health sector, etc. So at the moment, this standardization is kind of getting traction, and more this regulation is being implemented. And what it means, if companies are failing to meet the regulation requirements and they are losing data is being stolen or revealed, in that case, they are facing fines. So it means it could cause big kind of losses for companies. Yeah, and that's why they are willing to take measures to secure the information. So they would kind of secure their business reputation, and of course, not to get in trouble from regulators and not to get any financial fines for that. Yeah, so this is what I mentioned. So this is the so this information from this moment, because FIDO board is from time to time is getting onboarded new members. But from here, what you see, you can see such a kind of industry leaders like Intel, Microsoft, Apple, let's say computer chips producer like ARM, Intel, Meta. So it's actually Facebook as we know it. So many big companies which kind of joined the forces to make online access secure and standardized. Yeah, and what it means, so as I mentioned previously, that it was kind of ad hoc. Yeah, any one vendor who was doing this additional layer of security, however they wanted. So after FIDO was FIDO launched, they released already 2 versions of FIDO standardization, and in general, what it gives us, it's a very clear, very well documented way of authenticating users, and of course, ensuring not only the ease of use but also in security. So it could be, of course, it's a bit more complicated on the back end, but from the kind of process point of view, this could be represented like this in these pictures. Yeah, so first thing, what happens? Yeah, user wants to make an account. Yeah, create an account on some website. Yeah, user goes to the website, enters credentials which he wants is planning to use, username, password, etc. And later on, let's say if he is connecting or trying to create an account using mobile device. In that case, mobile device is asking him to approve this request to create an account. So it could be approved, let's say, using fingerprint to unlock his mobile phone. And in that case, as a key pair is being, so in the backend, this PKI infrastructure is being used. So it's like, I won't get in more in details, but it's a pair of 2 keys, public key and private key. So the private key stays generated on device, and the private key, public key, is being sent back to the site to which a user is trying to register his account. So actually there is a pair of keys, yeah, one on the website and a public, and the private key is on a device which never leaves this device. It means it's a secure. So yeah, user creates an account and he wants to, after some time, to log into the account, yeah. So he goes to the account enters the, let's say, username and password, and account says, yeah, I know this, I have this user, so he sends back some piece of information, says, please sign this piece of information with a private key which you have generated when you was creating an account. In the backend on the phone or computer, this is being done, and response is being sent to the let's say, to this authenticating party, and this let's say website checks if the information which was received from the user matches this public key which is available on the site, and in that case is being authenticated. Of course, there is more technical details behind that, but I won't be getting let's say in this session about it. Yeah, so this is kind of the process how this FIDO standardization is defining access to accounts. Yeah. So, well, I mentioned several types of accounts, well, several types of multi-factor technologies which are currently being used, and some of them more secure and some are not. So a very good representation of this, let's say, theoretical comparisons to the real life example. Yeah, a few years ago, Google actually have published their own study, which was based on a pretty big number of cases. Actually, we had 350,000 users. Well, it was 355,000 attempts to take over their accounts. And these accounts were using different type of multi-factor authentication solutions. And here's a very clear representation of the statistics, depending on what kind of multi-factor authentication measure they were using, how many of those accounts were taking over. So let's say, for users who were using, let's say, mobile phone, 50-50. So half of all these accounts were taken over by hackers or by the criminals. For those who were using SMS codes, 24% were taken over. 21% of those accounts which were using email. So actually, you just get the additional code to the email, but if your device is compromised, so this email could be read. And on device prompt, it means when you have, let's say, if I'm connecting to using my computer and I have my device, I get the prompt on device I have to push. So only 10% of such accounts were taken over. But none of the accounts were taken over which were using FIDO-based security keys. At that moment, Google was using YubiKeys as their primary security key. I'm not sure how it is now, because, well, first of all, we were using YubiKey. Later on, they decided to create their own key. Sometime after, they got back to the YubiKey. So it was kind of back and forth. But in general, FIDO-based USB security keys are able to secure 100% of accounts compared to other multi-factor authentication solutions, which are not that safe. And yeah, like in every industry, so the same thing in this industry is actually the driving forces behind it. Yeah, so we can call it the challenges. So in industry, what it is right now, yeah, probably most of you or all of you know that the number of, let's say, data breaches is increasing. So actually more cyber criminals are launching more cyber attacks because these tools are pretty widely available, and actually anyone who would want to start their hacker criminal career can do it just kind of based on monthly basis, we can rent the resources and can start doing that. But I strongly do not recommend doing it, despite the technology is available and accessible for the users. So yeah, companies are facing breaches. Yeah, one thing. Most of the cases, more than 80%, all the data breaches are related to stolen or lost credentials. It means passwords. So this is the area which has to be secured. That's why FIDO and other, let's say, FIDO Association, Alliance, and all the biggest, let's say, industry players are trying to secure these credentials, passwords. And the third thing, yeah, of course, cybercrime is on the rise. It is focusing on getting this user credentials, yeah. And this regulation, what I meant that also if you get breached, you have a risk of getting fined, or you can get a ransomware. So it means criminals are encrypting your data and you have to pay them back. So they would decrypt your data and you could continue doing your business. And there is also some kind of long-lasting effects. There is a statistics which shows that companies which had data breaches during some longer periods, we were losing the value even on their stock. So the solution for that is actually that since the focus and the targets of criminal is towards passwords, industry is trying to move away from passwords and move to the passwordless authentication. And how it could be done. So there are some examples here in the slide how it could be done. Yeah, so one is using USB authentication key based on FIDO 2 certification. So it's in general, instead of the password security, let's say, security token is being saved on your USB device, which never leaves the USB device. So it means that there is no way to take over or to read this information which is on this device. So phishing attempts is not does not have any theoretical possibility to read this information. And as you remember, I just was telling that the phishing attacks is actually most common attacks, and this is how criminals are getting access at a kind of stealing users' data. Of course, there are many other ways how to do it, but it's the most common and the most popular way to do it. The second one is using biometric data. Yeah, so you might be familiar using Windows Hello solution on your computer, which could be based on reading your fingerprint or even your face recognition, etc. And also could be this authentication using push mobile devices. So all of these, let's say, ways how to connect passwordless, it means log into the systems without using any type of passwords. So whenever it is based on your biometrics or on physical security tokens, which you are carrying with yourself, and let's say remotely, no one could take it over. So this would be kind of brief overview of this evolution of a multi-factor authentication. I'm not sure how much time it is now, but I believe we can move on to the questions if there are any.
Yes, thank you. We do have time for questions, and we will give time for the audience to be able to type the questions. But thank you truly, first of all, for the kind of general overview of the big picture, and then leading into the very practical example. For myself, every time I listen to the webinars, it's just like kind of, yes, you know how to be changing passwords, and yes, you update. And then every time a new webinar or a new lecture is kind of on this topic, and it's just like realization, okay, like that's not enough. We need to be doing more and so forth. So as an expert, like what do you foresee, like when could the passwordless, authentication be already extinct. Like you said, like that's one of the key threats identified in 2020. So, how do you envision the future? Like, will the transition be happening towards such like FIDO devices, or like what's your envisionment for the future?
Yeah, so it's like with any new technology. Yes, there are few things which are holding back, and a few things which are driving forward. Yeah, so looking from a perspective from kind of embracing this technology, so it is already available and you can use it right now. For example, yeah, I'll give you one very practical example. You can, if you are using Microsoft 365 subscription, you can start using it today. Maybe it won't reflect most of the companies, but we are a small company. We are using Microsoft 365, and for many of our accounts, we are already using this passwordless authentication. What it means is actually, yeah, it is based on a Microsoft account. When we are connecting to our other accounts using SSO, single sign-on method, we do not have to enter any passwords. We just stick in Ubico USB key. We enter, well, let's say I'm entering my PIN code. The PIN code unlocks my USB key, and then my Ubico, this USB key, can provide this kind of challenge response to the challenge using the certificate or the certificate which is stored on the key and authenticates me. So for those companies which, let's say, have invested in some kind of MFA solution and are using at the moment, they won't be switching sometime soon, because like any solution, it has this kind of a return on investment. Yeah, so if we have invested, it would not make sense, or maybe the board would not approve expenditure for new solution when this one haven't paid off. So it is, from what we are seeing, it is taking, let's say, well, at least in our regions, it is taking this kind of baby steps already. It is easier for small, more flexible companies to implement it. Even from our experience, we are seeing, let's say, already looking back at the perspective of sales of Ubico keys, we are seeing constant increase on yearly basis. So it means every single year we are selling more. It means it is being used. Of course, we do not have a possibility to talk to very much, to a lot of the customers and to see what they are doing, but the responses, what we are getting, yeah, they know about it, they are planning about it. Actually, even next week, I'm having actually several trainings for our partners. Partners, it means IT companies which are selling solutions to the customers, and they are interested in this solution to sell to their customers. So we see interest, the need, and a small kind of baby kind of implementation, let's say, with the baby steps. So yeah, we see a positive trend, and companies is moving. And one more thing, it has more chances to be implemented when the main technology leaders are implementing it and empowering other users. Let's say if we take Microsoft, it's a global corporation, and almost majority of all the companies using their services for user authentication, whatever it would be, Microsoft Azure or Office 365 or Microsoft 365 accounts, and this already gives them a possibility to start using multi-factor. So it's just a matter of willingness, maybe just a little bit of the budget, and we can move on. But it's moving forward. It's moving.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my next question. Like, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in that, change, kind of in the process of changing? So then that is the financial commitment and investment mostly, right?
Yeah, this is one part, and also unfortunately there are still some misconceptions about the cybersecurity in general, and sometimes it is visible, especially among SMB, it's a small and medium customers, where they have this misconception that think, oh, we are a small company, we're not interested, no one is interested in us, and we don't see the need to invest in a high level of the security. But what they are missing out on is actually that they could be as a relay or a proxy if someone is targeting after the bigger company, which is their customer or their supplier, and their company could be used as a kind of intermediary stop. They compromise them, and from there it's easier to pretend that they are from, let's say, this company, and move on with a bigger targets. So there is still misconception that they are not interested. So let's say criminals are interested in anyone they can breach, because in any way they have a scenarios how to exploit this data. Even we can take, let's say, housekeeper. Yeah, so okay, you entered, let's say you went to the Facebook, clicked on the link to open some kind of their website. It asks you once again to enter your credentials. You enter, a user hacker gets access. Okay, you don't have much data, but hacker can encrypt your computer and ask for 100 or 200 euros just to get your data back. And let's say if you have, let's say if you are a grandmother, you have some pictures of your grandsons and it's not backed up anywhere. And then you realize, okay, maybe it's better for me to pay 100 or 200 euros, but to get back my grandchildren photos. And you might think that, yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but you multiply it by several thousands of grandmothers and you get substantial amount.
Yeah, and I think the reality is, when people hear about phishing attacks and about security, somehow I think simple individuals don't necessarily worry about that, because you kind of always think that the things will happen on a larger scale where it's businesses and so forth. But the example that you are giving is exactly saying that everyone is vulnerable, and then how does everyone ensure their own data, their own protection, and just kind of like educating themselves about what are the steps that need to be taken. I don't see any questions coming up, which I guess we can treat that maybe the presentation was very clear and which it was truly. Like, I mean, and I do want to thank you for the giving the broader picture, and then the steps of what need to be taken and where the future is kind of taking the industry. I do see amongst attendees some of our cybersecurity bootcamp participants. So I think as if you were to talk to the cybersecurity professionals who are entering the field of cybersecurity, what would be your advice, your recommendation, or your wish for the future? Right? I mean, you are the expert in the industry. Like, you're seeing these threats, these risks. You're talking about the changes that are happening and that will need to be taken. So, just kind of as a concluding statement, what is your wish as the professional in the industry, and what could be your last word and recommendation for the people who work or will work in the cybersecurity field?
Yeah, so probably I would make this kind of related to our everyday lives. Yeah, so our cyber, let's say our digital life, what we are doing, and our real life, in both of these areas, we should be keeping our hygiene. We call it a cyber hygiene. There are some basic principles which we need to kind of stick to. And in most of the cases, it will save us from a big amount or big share of the problems if we just commit to do simple tasks, which are, let's say, like this password changing, using password managers, changing it regularly, not clicking on the links which for example, if I receive an email from someone which I was not talking, well, I don't know, I should not be opening the attachment which was sent. So in general, there is a lot of different type of the recommendation from many different, let's say, associations, regulators, etc. Even if we are talking, let's say, about let's say Lithuania, for example, I'm happy we have this it's data protectorate, it's an institution. They provided some guidelines and recommendations, and we are constantly updating. I think right now they have something like version number 3. So please stick at least to one or several of these kind of guidelines which are provided by organizations which are providing standardization or regulation, and in that case you at least you will kind of secure yourself from the most of the threats which could be happening to you. And of course, later on, if you see a very specific use case, you should approach the professionals, and professionals will help you out.
All right. Well, thank you. So today it wasn't just about the regular hygiene that has to be a part of, everyday reality, but it's also knowing the tools and the new developments in the industry that could be applied. So truly, Evelyn, thank you for your time and for your experience sharing with a lot of practical information about what could be done and what the tools are out there. So I do hope that for the audience, that you will appreciate what you've learned today. At the same time, I do want to also mention that next Thursday, so exactly in a week, again, the same time, we will be having our other partner, this time an Italian cybersecurity company, HWG, which has already opened up in Lithuania and had the Nordic office in Vilnius set up. And our speaker, Andrei Montiano, will talk next Thursday about SIAM and detecting what we are logging. So again, it will be another practical webinar with some theory and practical application to know what tools are available in the field and giving you more education about what's happening in the field of cybersecurity and what are the things we all need to know, and especially for those who are working in the field, what can be the new news that you leave with from the webinar. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Evaldi, once again, and big thanks to Hermitage Solutions Baltics for providing us with the experts for the webinar and for sharing your experience from your work field about the new products and developments. Well, not necessarily new, but what is happening in the area. Thanks again, and wishing everyone a peaceful evening, and we'll see you with our cyber webinars in exactly